It's an honor to open the awards ceremony. MEI has been acknowledging individuals from the region for their outstanding work since 2008. And in 2010, our MEI Visionary Award went to former Deputy Prime Minister of Lebanon, Issam, for the tremendous work that his foundation has done, providing services to underserved parts of Lebanon. And that gave rise to the Issam M. Faris Award for Excellence in 2011, endowed by the Faris family, allowing us to celebrate the achievements of even more remarkable individuals from the region. And it is an award that we are very, very proud and honored to give out. Last year's Faris Award went to Syrian philanthropist Ayman Asfari for his work to promote Arab civil society and empower future generations through education. This year, our focus is on the power that art has to transform societies for the better. And this year, we have chosen to shine a spotlight on the tremendous efforts of one very impressive young woman from the Emirates who has done so much to empower a new generation of Gulf and Arab artists. Sheikha Hoor Qasimi is our Issam M. Faris Award recipient tonight, and here to present her award is Sheena Wagstaff. Sheena is joining us from New York, where she serves as the head of the Metropolitan Museum's Department of Modern and Contemporary Art. Sheena joined the Met in 2012 to expand the museum's contemporary art programming, including curating modern and contemporary art from the Middle East, which is very exciting for us Middle East art fans. So we're very much looking forward to your shows, Sheena. She moved to New York from London, where she served as the chief curator of the Tate Modern and played a key role in its tremendous growth and success. In addition to overseeing more than 60 major exhibits of work from Gauguin to Kandinsky to Barnett Newman, she also spearheaded the establishment of the Turbine Hall Commissions, those incredible immersive experiences when you enter the Tate Modern by artists like Ai Weiwei and Olafur Eliasson. Her curatorial interest in contemporary art of the Middle East led to a Tate Modern exhibit that was inaugurated at the Queen's Palace in Kabul in 2011. She was also a member of the Mayor of London's Advisory Board for Shubak, London's first festival of contemporary Arab culture. And she serves on several other advisory boards relating to Middle Eastern art, including for the Istanbul Modern. And these are just among a few of the reasons we are so fortunate to have Sheena Wagstaff with us here tonight to introduce Sheikha Hoor. Sheena, may I invite you to the stage?
Thank you so much, Kate, for a very generous introduction. I appear in front of you this evening with some trepidation, as I am one of those stuffy Londoners. And I promise to speak very slowly. Sheikha Hoor, Dr. El-Erian, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm honored to be presenting the 2015 Issam M. Faris Award for Excellence to this year's very worthy recipient, Sheikha Hoor Al-Qasimi. I should like to thank the Middle East Institute's Board of Governors, President Wendy Chamberlain, and Senior Vice President Kate Seeley for inviting me to be part of this special evening. While we know that the Middle East Institute's traditional focus has been to help inform smart Middle East policy, it is of special significance that the MEI has recently added a new pillar to its mission. This is an arts and culture program which highlights the voices and work of artists, filmmakers, writers, and others from the Middle East here in Washington, D.C. As someone who has worked in the arts for decades, I can vouch that the arts are a crucial bridge builder. Ambitious art programming in institutions across the world has found that there is a large audience amongst us all, seeking to understand our increasingly complex daily lives. Artists themselves are already thoroughly interwoven in transnational networks, and we can take our cue from them. The arts bring people together across cultures and religions, breaking down barriers and allowing for new connections and new histories to be built. particularly in respect to what Ambassador Ford was just talking about with regard to migration. At the same time, there is a slowly dawning global recognition that flourishing societies include cultural objectives as key to their sustainable development goals, both as a dimension and simultaneously a big driver of development. So I am delighted that the Middle East Institute has chosen to honor Sheikha Hoor Al-Qasimi tonight. Having known her and her work for many years, I can personally verify that she has, as the award states, empowered a generation of artists from the Gulf and the Middle East by supporting arts education and in developing the region's premier internationally recognized showcase of contemporary art. Previous Issam M. Fares Award recipients have included, as Kate mentioned, a foreign minister and UN peace negotiator, a scholar legislator who crusades for self-determination, and an energy executive and philanthropist. Tonight, it is the power of the arts that we are honoring with this award, as we recognize the role of one highly accomplished woman in mentoring artists from across the Middle East and for making her home city one of the leading cultural capitals of the Arab world. Sheikha Hoor has done this by establishing the Sharjah Art Foundation, an organization that advances the visual arts in the Gulf, via 3 prime objectives: by supporting working artists, exhibiting innovative work, truly innovative work, and conducting an ambitious and diverse program of regional and international collaborations. On a granular level, the foundation also provides grants, runs workshops, and offers residencies. All of these have helped nurture a very dynamic Emirati art scene from the ground up. The foundation also supports Sharjah's signature art event, the 2-month-long Sharjah Biennial, which since 2003, under Sheikha Hoor's leadership, has grown into a major event on the global art calendar and is today the most important contemporary art biennial in the Middle East region. If you've never been, and I bet many of you haven't, do plan to go to biennial number 13 in March 2017. It is a rewarding and enlightening experience. Sharjah's streets, its squares, and its old harbour are transformed into an art-filled haven, presenting outstanding art by both local and international artists. The biennial also offers popular education and outreach programs, encouraging Sharjah's diverse communities to be involved and engaged in this unique event. Under Sheikha Hoor's leadership, the Sharjah Biennial is notable for the very high caliber of artist selection presentations. The contemporary art magazine Art Review recently named Sheikha Hoor among the most influential Arab women in the arts for the 3rd consecutive year on its annual list of the so-called Power 100. Such recognition joins a long list of accolades she's received for her role as a cultural innovator. And that's not all. She's a practicing artist herself with advanced degrees in painting and curating. She teaches, serves on many advisory boards, and this year was the curator of the UAE's National Pavilion at the Venice Biennial. She's also known for her charm, for her engaging sense of mischievous humor, her very natural modesty, and her quiet determination to push boundaries, and by gosh, she has done that. She is indeed an inspired choice to receive this award. Sheikha Hoor, on behalf of the Board of Governors of the Middle East Institute, it gives me great pleasure to present to you the Issam M. Fares Award for Excellence for your tireless efforts to nurture and promote a generation of your fellow artists in the Gulf and the broader Middle East, and to build a forum that gathers the world together around art and culture. Please join me to receive the award and to share your thoughts with us all. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I have to bring this down a bit. Thanks. Thank you, Sheena. Thank you to the Faris family. It is a great honor to be here. Thank you, Kate, Wendy, Lean, and Clarianne, and everyone else who made my presence here possible. It's truly an honor to be here today to accept the Issam M. Faris Award for something which has been a passion and a personal journey for me. Of course, none of this would have been possible if not for the support and encouragement of my father, Sheikh Dr. Sultan Al-Qasimi, who has been an inspiration, and I know a lot of people here already know my father, so I don't have to say. He has taught us all to think for ourselves, to engage with other cultures, to learn and exchange ideas, and emphasize the importance of culture in building bridges, locally and internationally. In the UAE, we live in a multicultural society, engage in many different languages, and one of our roles at Sharjah Art Foundation is to bring people from all walks of life together through the visual arts, talks, music, and film. I was recently asked by a journalist what the Museum of the Future would look like. My response was, to me, it would really be a place that engages with the general public, educates, and is part of a community. It isn't contained within four walls, but spreads into the city and into neighborhoods, touches on histories of where it is, its social, architectural, political, and cultural histories, and is not just a showcase for artworks. It's constantly growing and evolving in its programs, ideas, and ways of working. Through working with artists from different generations within the Arab world and beyond, we try to demonstrate their immense contributions to the history of art in the region. We do this by producing bilingual publications, curating exhibitions, and hopefully touring these exhibitions internationally. We invite artists to take part in residencies. We have a biannual international production grant, an annual conference, better known as the March meeting, film and music programs, as well as our publication and education programs. And of course, where it all started, in the 1993 Sharjah Biennial, which this year celebrated its 24th anniversary. I hope you'll be able to save the date, as Sheena mentioned, and join us for the next biennial in March 2017, which will be curated by Lebanese curator and art world game changer, Christine Tomei, who just yesterday opened the 7th iteration of Homeworks, a biennial event organized by Ashkal Alwan in Beirut. I can, of course, speak about Sharjah Art Foundation for many hours, so I should probably end here and leave you to enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheikha Hoor, for those lovely remarks. We move now from the Gulf region and the cutting edge of contemporary art to matters of global finance and regional prosperity. I have the pleasure to introduce this evening's second award presenter, a highly successful and respected investment banker and corporate manager with more than 30 years of experience in the securities industry. Tarek Abdelmajid, known to some of you in this room as Terry, is a founding member of the New York-based international financial services firm Perella Weinberg Partners, where he is co-head of the asset management business. Before that, Terry spent his entire career at Morgan Stanley, interacting with multinational companies and investors active in the Gulf and the Middle East, and ultimately becoming the head of worldwide investment banking. His long experience and remarkable success in the world of finance make him an ideal candidate to speak about our next honoree, Mohamed El-Erian, recipient of the MEI Visionary Award tonight. I would also like to recognize the fact that last year's MEI Visionary Award, Shafiq Gabr, is with us tonight. We're very honored to have him here in the audience. Good to see you, Shafiq, and many thanks as always for your support of MEI. Terry also shares MEI's commitment to promoting U.S.-Middle East understanding. He contributes his time to many institutions that are bridging our two societies. Among them, he serves as a member of the advisory board of the Middle East Program for the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, as well as for the Middle East study group of the Aspen Institute, among many, many organizations. Terry, it is such a pleasure to meet you after so many years of hearing about you. His sister and my sister are very close friends. May I please invite you to the stage?
How are you? Good evening. That was a totally unmerited introduction. I was happy just to not fall on the stairs. Usually I quit right after I don't fall on the stairs, so bear with me. Thank you very much again, Kate. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, excellencies, members of the diplomatic corps of not just the United States, but obviously many, many other countries. I should say, ahlan wa sahlan, assalamu alaikum. It's a great pleasure to be here. When Kate first asked me to consider whether or not I would be willing to give and present this award to Mohamed, I thought about it, when I read her email, I thought about it for about 2.5 seconds. And then I replied and said I would be delighted and thrilled to do it. I should tell you that in that 2.5 seconds, I thought very, very carefully about it and concluded that any opportunity to both honor as well as roast Dr. El-Erian is something that you don't pass up lightly. He's absolutely petrified. For those of you that can see his face, he's developing twitches and all sorts of things. I'll tell you why in a few minutes. But seriously, I'm very humbled and honored to be here. It's a great opportunity to really recognize a very good friend of mine, and it's a privilege to be able to tell you a little bit about him. Perhaps some of the things that you're not so familiar with. This role, however, is very familiar to me. I'm sort of like the bridesmaid, never the bride. I'm always presenting Mohamed with awards, but I'm never getting any myself. So I'm getting pretty good at this. But seriously, in my case, I'm thrilled yet again to be able to honor Mohamed. Any opportunity to celebrate a gentleman of his achievements, his contributions, and his character is not to be passed up lightly. As I sat down to write some of my thoughts, I sat down on the train about 4 hours ago is when I started to write down my thoughts. But I was developing them for months. And, you know, I really didn't know where to start. So I took my iPad out and I Googled him. And what I discovered is that it would take me days to pour through the pages of stuff on Dr. Mohamed El-Erian. And so I decided that the Google exercise was hopeless and that it really didn't provide me with very much direction, except for two important observations. The first is that the breadth, really, and the depth of areas that Mohamed touches upon in his everyday life are extraordinary. The diversity of things that he has impacted really are incredible, and they leave you a little bit breathless. But the second thing that I discovered is that it's extremely difficult to find anything negative about this man. I looked everywhere, believe me. I tried everything. I even tried fictionalizing some of the things, embellishing them a little bit, but it didn't work. There's very little that you can find, if anything, so don't try and look. It's a deeply frustrating experience, I can tell you that. The one thing that I knew I didn't want to do tonight was sort of talk about the facts. I didn't want to give, his biography in my words. I really didn't want to talk about his degrees, his accolades, his accomplishments, his jobs, his contributions. They're all, frankly, very well known. And if you look at today's program, you'll see them in there. What I did want to do, however, was do one of really two things. Mohamed and I first met when we were teenagers in New York. His father, Dr. Abdullah El-Erian, followed my uncle as Egypt's ambassador to the United Nations. And it was during that sort of transition period that we met. He's 2 years younger than me, but much naughtier. Lucky for us, there was no social media at the time, so I'm kind of, I could really go crazy with this and embellish a great deal, and there would be no proof that I was wrong. It'd be his word against mine. But I thought that somehow he wouldn't really appreciate me getting into those stories, so I decided to spare him. The second thing I could do is talk to you about his character, what I think are the traits and values that are enduring and that really are reflected in all of his achievements and all of his contributions and his impact. It's really what he's about that you can see reflected in all of the things that are manifested in those public expressions and those accolades and so on. And I was thinking about, what are those things? And I think the first thing that I will not count as something on my list of three, because it's hard to cut down the character traits to three. Obviously, he's a person with a gifted mind and a fine education, both of which are very helpful in life, but they can hardly really explain the degree of success that he's experienced. And I think I tried to narrow those down to three things. I would say first is a deep commitment to excellence. He aspires to do absolutely everything he does in a first-class way. And I should say that he very rarely fails to accomplish that. He's really, when you sort of review the record and look at the things that he's done, obviously there's a very, very strong motivation to excellence in him. Second, he has an extremely kind and generous spirit and nature in really every regard. I've seen this over the years in many, many different situations, whether it's how he treats the person who opens the door for him, or how he doesn't insult the president when he's consulted, which is really hard to do sometimes over the years. But he really does understand the humanity of everyone that he deals with. And that in turn makes him a tremendous human being, and which in turn makes him an incredibly effective leader. And you can't accomplish the things that he's done, whether it's in small settings or in massive organizations like PIMCO, without having an extraordinary humanity. And I think that's an exceptional aspect. And it's also manifested in his philanthropy. I won't extol the virtues of Mohammed's philanthropic pursuits, but they're manifold and highly impactful. Finally, Mohammed, I think the thing that strikes me the most about you over time is your humility. It's a really powerful differentiator. It's disarming. The sort of more clever you are, the more successful you are, if you can manage to hang on to your humility, it propels you even further. And I think he's mastered that. In fact, my father always says that the only thing you should be arrogant about is your humility. And even that you should keep a secret. And I think you do that in an incredible way. The sort of continual subordination of ego is something that's been a very powerful theme, I think, throughout your life. And it's a very notable one. I think it's one of your most endearing qualities. It really is. In fact, Mohammed absolutely hates receiving awards, recognition. He tries to crawl under the table. It's a testament to that humility, which is why I love giving them to him and why I keep taking every opportunity to give it to him, because he absolutely hates it. So Mohammed, if you wouldn't mind joining me for your award. Thank you. No, he is.
Thank you, Tara. Let me just start by saying what an incredible pleasure and an honor it is to be here. And I'm humbled. I'm humbled by the award. I'm humbled to share this evening with Sheikha Hoor, whose achievements are incredible relative to mine. And I'm humbled to share a table with the impressive Sheikha, who received this award before me. I'm also humbled by Tariq Magid. There are very few people in life that have achieved what he's achieved and done it the way he's done it. If you haven't figured it out yet, he's a class act in every single way. Also, this evening was special because I met his son for the first time. And boy, is his son impressive. And his son is a little bit too disciplined. I said to him, give me something I can use against your dad when I get up there. And he absolutely refused to tell me anything at all. So the discipline, the humanity of the dad is clearly in the son, as is the talent. Thank you, Chair Richard Clark. Thank you, Ambassador Wendy Chamberlain. Thank you all colleagues in the Institute. You know, what you do and your leadership have consistently met the mission of the Institute of promoting knowledge and better understanding of the Middle East here, and also of the United States in the Middle East. And you do this, and I'm going to use a trifecta that I'm going to come back to, and we heard about it, through informing people, educating people, and connecting people. And whether it's the conferences we heard about, the scholars, the language education, the journal, 70 years, the longest peer-reviewed journal on the Middle East, you do it in a very effective way. And again, because I'm going to come back to it, I particularly congratulate you and admire what you do with the youth and the role you've played in trying to enable the future of the Middle East. As some of you may know, my work over the years has concentrated on the good, the bad, and the ugly of the global economy. And I've been able to do that not because of who I am, but because of the opportunities that were afforded to me. As you heard, my father was a civil servant in Egypt on a very meager salary. Every Egyptian pound went into the education of his children. And I wouldn't be here today if he hadn't invested in his children. Because of his investment in me, and because he always encouraged me to question things, I've operated at the intersection of economics, policy, markets, and politics. Now, that intersection is really unbalanced in the Middle East today. I don't need to tell you, but depending on where you look, one of the following challenges, or a number of them, face the people living in the regions. Population pressures, inconsistent policy making, inequality of income, wealth, and opportunity, badly functioning markets, messy politics, and in some cases, as we heard tonight, military conflicts and civil disorder. In fact, when you look at the Middle East in the newspapers in this country, whether they're informed or whether they're ill-informed, the bad and the ugly tends to crowd out the good. And of course, the most alarming in all this is the amount of human suffering that is going on a daily basis including very distressing civilian casualties. Equally alarming is the insufficient investment in the future of the region, the flagrant underutilization of human resources, especially the young and especially the women. This sense of lost opportunities is the biggest challenge facing the region. And it really stands out when you see how well people from the region do when they are enabled and empowered. Tare is an example of this, and there are many others. But the personal experience I'll never forget was in the late 80s. I was flying Egypt Air from Cairo to New York. It was the old airport. It was not a very nice airport. The new airport is great. The old airport wasn't. The flight was 5 hours late, and no one had informed us how late we were going to be and why we were late. We're just sitting in the airport in the middle of the night, wondering what's going to happen to the flight. Finally, the flight took off. Sitting next to me was an American businessman who didn't say a single word to me during the whole 10 hours across. Then we came to JFK, and it was the perfect Egypt Air landing, what the Egypt Air pilots are known for. You could not feel the plane landing. You could not feel the wheels touching the tarmac. Perfect landing. And the person next to me said, "Typical Middle East." And I looked at him and said, "Pardon?" He said, "Typical Egypt. First time we speak." And I say, "What do you mean?" He said, "You know what? You leave the person unconstrained, and it's the perfect landing. You put him in a system that doesn't empower him. We are 5 hours late, and I still don't know why I'm 5 hours late." And that story of the individual and empowering the individual is something that has always been at the back of our mind. And I want to spend a few minutes on this with you. Yes, as we heard earlier, there's every reason to be concerned about the Middle East, to be anxious, to be even depressed. But let me tell you some other stories that are not well reported. I'm the first to acknowledge they're micro in nature, they're selective, but they're indicative of something much bigger, and something that, if empowered, would make a big difference, because they're about institutions. They're about institutions in the private sector or institutions in the public sector. Because of Sheikha Hoor, because of myself, I've decided to take two examples, one from Egypt and one from the United Arab Emirates. The one from Egypt is the Children's Cancer Hospital that provides world-class treatment to children with cancer at no cost whatsoever to the kids. It has become so good that its partnerships include elite medical schools in the United States, such as Harvard. Its donors range from average Egyptians donating £1, about 14 cents, to those donating millions of dollars. It is fully funded through donations. Its survival rate for kids with cancer growing up in Egypt has increased to 73%. It's not at the 85% of the United States now, but it's among the highest in the developing world. And it's just scratching the surface, treating just 30% of the population of kids that need it. And it has massive aspirations, and it will get there. The other example comes from the public sector, and it comes from the UAE. There, and because of the nature of this audience, I took this example. There's a newly established Emirati diplomatic academy, and it's taking an admirable modern approach to training a whole new cadre of civil servants. Like the Middle East Institute, they combine academic, research, language, communication. They have executive education. And two-thirds of the inaugural class is composed of women. And they just went through their first series of midterms, and women dominate the top 10 students so far. For those of us who try not just to focus on the bad and the ugly, but to also look at the good, there's a lot of good going on in the Middle East today. And the good speaks to the fundamental issue of enabling a population to take better control of its destiny and to better control of its prosperity. I say this because right now, youth unemployment in the Arab world is 30%, and women are hit particularly hard. To make this even more alarming, long-term youth unemployment is 60% of the total. Now, it doesn't take long for you to realize that when you're unemployed as a young person, and if you're unemployed for a long time, you become unemployable. Why? Because the system produces young people every single year. And those of you who are in companies would know that you'd rather hire someone who's fresh out of school or fresh out of university than someone who hasn't worked for 5 or 10 years. So this issue means that there's a potential for a lost generation of the young. Because we're in this room and because the Middle East Institute believes that, rightly, that the future of this region is in its youth, let me tell you something that's really exciting: startups. Startups are becoming more and more common in the Arab world, and in Egypt, they are flourishing. And they're flourishing despite limited funding, despite difficult environments. And they're doing so because there are now technologies that enable and empower the young in a manner that was unthinkable only a few years ago. So let me tell you about a recent survey of the young in the Arab world. Because who else better than the young themselves to tell us what they're feeling? Yes, they are anxious. The top 3 things they're anxious about: ISIS, terrorism, and unemployment. And yes, the majority doubt that their government can deliver. 61% of those outside the GCC, countries outside the Gulf Cooperation Council, doubt that their government can deliver. That number within the GCC is 29%. And yet, they are optimistic about their future. When asked to describe what their future is going to be in the region, 63% chose positive adjectives: optimistic, excited, hopeful. When asked how they were going to achieve this optimism, 2 in 5 said they intended to start their own business in the next 5 years, mainly in technology and retail. That is what the young are telling us, despite all the bad things that you hear. Yes, the environment doesn't as yet allow the unleashing of this amazing potential. But I agree with what we heard earlier this evening, that the potential is there, and it's just a matter of time until it will be unleashed. It's becoming more resilient, it's becoming more agile, and it's being concentrated in centers of excellence that feed onto themselves and create these mutual positive cycles. So I, for one, am delighted that in addition, tomorrow at the annual conference, in addition to talking about the challenge of stability, the outlook for the next administration, the legacy of the current administration, that there will also be sessions on human empowerment, social inclusion, and activism. And this is where I want to end up with a plea to you. Look at this room. This room is full of writers, of influencers, of thought leaders. It's full of policy wonks, of diplomats, of business leaders, of innovators, and of philanthropists. I think I've covered everybody in the room by now. So each and every one of us can help make a difference in enabling the young in the Middle East to overcome the legacy of poor governance, weak institutions, and co-opted system. We can help through advocacy, we can help through funding, we can help through improving the general environment, and specific measures that enable entrepreneurial youth. It is about the trifecta of the Middle East Institute: informing, educating, and connecting. I am in front of you today less because of what I've done and more because of what other people have done for me. And like Sheikha Hoor, no one has been more influential in enabling me than my late father. And he knew why. He was born in a village in Egypt. His first aspiration was to attend high school in Damanhur. His second aspiration was to attend Cairo University. And his fantasy was to go to Columbia for his PhD, which he did on a government scholarship. He understood how education enabled, and he then devoted his life to enabling his children and others. I thank the Middle East Institute for this enormous honor. I thank you all for listening to me. I thank Tariq, and if you believe that he's just a bridesmaid, keep him away from anybody you know. And I wish you all a wonderful evening. Thank you very much.
Mohamed, thank you so much. I thought that was enormously inspiring. This has been, for me, an inspiring evening. We have clearly chosen well the two honorees, but honestly, I wish we had two more of those little crystal things, because I think the folks that introduced our two honorees are equally deserving. Thank you all very much. I hope we see all of you at the annual conference tomorrow. As Mohamed El-Erian pointed out, it's more than just politics. It's more. We will talk about social issues as well. It'll be held here in this room, and we invite you all to join us tomorrow. Thank you again for coming. Thank Kate Seeley and Kevin Cole and Mark Sheelan and everyone, all of the staff of the Middle East Institute, Claire, for all of your work in making this evening possible. I love you dearly, and see you tomorrow morning.